Hi, everybody. I'm Claude Cocchini, and welcome. This is also the College of Engineering Celebration of Faculty Careers Colloquium. And this is, for those of you who have not heard about it before, this is something that the college put in place about 3 years ago to give the opportunity to faculty, senior faculty, namely full professors who have been full professors for 7 years or more, to have a chance to talk about their careers, present their work, and effectively share really their experiences with all the faculty, the staff, the students. And so in addition to actually presenting their work, they also get a chance after this to meet with the dean and the department head and talk about the next 7 years. And so today, we are thrilled to have Professor David Radcliffe, who, as you all know, is the Kamyar Haghighi head of the School of Engineering Education. And I have to look this one up so I say it right. And he is the Epistemology Professor of Engineering Education, right? So he received his BS and MS degrees in mechanical engineering from the University of Queensland, Australia, and his PhD in bioengineering from Strathclyde University in Scotland. He joined Purdue in 2007 as a named professor. Actually, he wasn't the head. And has worked and conducted research at universities in Australia, the UK, and the US. And we're really thrilled to hear what he has to tell us. Mm-hmm. David.
Thank you, Claude. Mm-hmm. So thanks for the introduction. I want to just set the scene a little bit. First of all, those of you who have seen my presentations know there's always some interesting opening slide. If you don't recognize this, this is the former Cafe Royale. So my career spans nearly 40 years, 9 of those at Purdue, so about a quarter. The talk today is very much about being an accidental head or about having a leadership role in the academy. I'm not going to talk about the other 2/3 or 3/4 of my career, but I'll touch on them enough to make sense of what's happened while I've been here. So when Vicky, my wife, and I came here in 2007, we were empty nesters. We had a son who'd already moved to Melbourne a few years earlier. Our daughter moved to London 3 days before we came here. And so normal people who are empty nesters just downsize, go to the beach and have an easy life, but we came to Indiana instead. Came on a 3-year visa. You didn't know what was going to happen after that necessarily. My research group, students and money, there's no way that could move from Australia to here, so I was supervising students for at least a couple of years. New department, lots of junior faculty. There was no chance to get graduate students here because they really had to go to the junior faculty who needed to graduate a PhD in order to get promoted and tenured. So that's kind of background. I'll fill in some more in a minute. The slides, as you go to each of them, you'll see 2 things about the slides. One, they're largely from my slide deck, which I've developed over the time I've been here and used in various presentations. Those from this community will have seen a number of them before, probably to the extent of being very boring. But there it is. On the lower left-hand side, you'll see the place and the date of when that slide was made. And that's really important. These were done at the time. These are not retrospective. These were what was said at the time. So that's important. All right, let's kick it off. A little bit of background. So when I came here in 2007, I got this job. I got a series of jobs there that Kamyar gave. So it was a young department. There weren't senior faculty. I was here to help Kamyar with this place. So I did a whole bunch of things around the first year, around the grad program, and around other things. And then suddenly things took a twist that wasn't predicted. I became Kamyar. Those who don't know the story, got ALS. He was probably aware of it about the time I arrived. He progressively got iller and iller, was ultimately in a wheelchair, unable to speak. I was literally his voice when I was associate head at lots of meetings. So that was interesting to be the voice of somebody else saying what they want to say, not what you want to say. Then I became interim head, had a search, I put my hand up and I got the job. So, again, some of you have seen this, but those not in our community won't have seen it. I think the easiest way to I want to give a sense of the history of School of Engineering education. You can see a little movie in a minute. If you look on the right-hand screen, so you've got time along here, you've got heads, you've got the corresponding dean, and the dean and the head are a very important pairing. And so without the right dean, the head can't be effective. And we've been blessed to have two deans, quite different, but totally supportive of this enterprise. I can't tell you how important that is. There are 6 faculty who were here, who were in the former freshman engineering, and I can see 2 of them in the audience, Bill and Heidi. Heidi's somewhere, I saw her come in before. And there'd been 50 years of freshman engineering and 35 years of the interdisciplinary engineering program, and so this is what happened. And you'll see the little movie with little pop-ups that tell you about stuff that happened. Down at the bottom, you'll see this is new faculty joining, lots of other things happening. And then on the top row, you'll see little purple diamonds in a second. That's faculty being tenured and promoted. And then you'll see more little yellow ones at the bottom. That's new faculty hires. So I don't expect you to read or see all of that. The message is in the movie. The message is there's been a lot going on and a lot of change and a lot of development, and there's no reason to think that what continues out from there in the immediate term is going to be any less so. There's no reason to say, oh, we're all here, we've arrived, it's all done. On the contrary. So, outline of my talk. I'm going to say something about the road, how I got to be at Purdue. I'm then going to talk about realising the vision and telling the story, essentially what I've done while I've been here. Then on a more personal note, think of some memorable moments and some fun things. In other words, more about what does this mean, at least to me. And I'll touch very briefly on the next move. So let's get into that, on the road to Purdue. So I'm a child of the 60s, and I've been conflicted my entire life between a sort of a technical thing, exemplified by the space program. I listened to all the Mercury and Gemini launches on Voice of America on a crackly crystal radio set that I built. It used to fall on my head every now and then on the end of my bed. At the same time, I was particularly, my social interests were, I guess, piqued by Bob. And these 2 things have run through my entire career, and I've been trying to get out of engineering. Talk to Vicky. I've been trying to get out of engineering ever since I got into it. Eventually, I'll achieve that. And of course, for those who don't know, Gus Grissom was the first Purdue grad to fly in space. Everybody always talks about he was the second American. He was the first American to fly twice into space. And I can tell you the long, boring story how to connect him all the way through to the shuttle, but that's another day. Claude alluded briefly to my career. Here's another quick summary. So I did a bachelor's in mechanical. I then went into bioengineering. Technically, my master's was in mechanical, but I made my own study up. So I did anatomy courses and physiology courses and things. So I created my own degree. I then ended up in chemical engineering because my PhD was in mass transfer, actually designing hemoperfusion, in other words, artificial kidneys and things, which I've been working on the need for since. When you look at the jobs, it's really important. There's a difference between Australia and the US. The US does have the term lecturer and senior lecturer, but in Australia it's entirely different. It comes out of the British system, so that's the 4 ranks with a rough equivalence. So then I went away from my bioengineering and chemical engineering back to mainstream mechanical, but focused on design, involved with a large industry project, designing and building a large piece of mining equipment. Moved to Adelaide, set up some programs there, set up a final year exhibition, which still exists, I'm pleased to say. Then I slid a little bit towards more design research and then into education research when I was back at UQ, and I'll talk a bit about the time at Stanford, which is very pivotal in all of this. I then took on a series of strategic university industry partnerships for the 7 years prior to coming here. And then I figured, well, I've done all the things I want to do there. It's time for a change. Let's see what happens. I'm not going to spend time on this. This is a slide I've used for many years. Left-hand side is some of the sort of areas that I've worked in. The right-hand side in blue are some of the particular projects that refer to them. And I could spend an entire talk on all of that, but that's not the point. The point is I've intentionally had an eclectic range of things. The butterfly is really important. I used to be... my career was stalled at one point because people who were traditional, who thought all a career is drill, do your PhD and then drill deeper for 20 years, I wasn't that person. And so I was accused in the pejorative as being a butterfly. I now own it as a point of pride. So, where you've been affects how you see the world. So first of all, this is the real way of the world. You've been under this delusion for a long time that the map of the world looks like this. There's no logical reason why it's around the way it is. It's just that there's a bit of a dominance in Europe when people started to do global maps. So I've lived in three different continents and worked or studied or done something for periods of time, and that's shaped a lot of who I am. And it goes back to the earlier slides. Again, I could spend a whole talk on that. That's not the point. The point is I've moved around a little bit. So let's move into the real path to Purdue. So in 91, 92, so again, you can always see down the left-hand side what's going on. I did a sabbatical at Stanford, and the other half of my time was at Xerox PARC. And I taught Larry Leifer's graduate level design course, which is a year-long design and 9 months long design and build, people from industry. In those days, it was $15,000 per project. Now it's like $50,000 or $60,000 per project. We built paper bikes. Neither Terman Building nor that lake are there anymore. But anyway, it's a long story. Point is, I got to know about the Synthesis Coalition, and as a result, I got myself the first Australian National Teaching Fellowship and went back to the US in the 94 or so and spent a number of months here visiting not all but a fair number of those places, and I got to know a number of folks. So that was me moving towards from the design space, research space, into the education space. If I look at retrospectively what happened between 92, so straight after Stanford, until here, there's a kind of a trajectory which may or may not have been intentional in hindsight, starting up various labs, design spaces. This is important here. I was in Australia in 95, 96, the same process that produced EC2000, a parallel process to what produced EC2000 in this country was going on. And we're exchanging information. And I was an advisor to the chair of that and actually drafted the first version of Changing the Culture, which was that report, the equivalent of EC2000. And then the real politicians got involved and gutted out the exciting bits. Lesson learnt. I went on, did other things, started the Catalyst Centre for Research Centre for Society and Technology. Again, you can kind of see the links back to my 1960s. And a few other bits and pieces, and then I ended up here. But to get here, there was a couple of groups of people who helped in the transition. For those of you who've been to ASEE meetings, American Society of Engineering Education, it's a large meeting, multi-thousands of people. Unless you belong to a mob, to a division, you kind of can wander around endlessly in a large convention hall and not know who you are. So the person who helped me, a lot of that work earlier on, I didn't go into it, were done with the university library. And so this is Gulshan Cribb, who's the engineering librarian. And I did a lot of work with them. We set up a virtual engineering library in Australia and a whole bunch of other stuff, because it was a group of people I found, because in my own department, I wasn't seeing lots of people who were like me. I had one, Tim Holt, but the rest. So I found friends where they were. But the point here is that my first ASEE was 2000 in St. Louis. Gulshan had gone to 1999 in Seattle, made such a buzz with the librarians. I had all these entrees. So I still hang out with the librarians at ASEE occasionally. They have the best sort of parties. They always have balloons at their things. And the other group is this group. And so Cindy Atman, who was speaking here 2 weeks ago, I met her on that 1994 trip in DC. And then in 2002 at ASWE, by then I'd worked out if you turn up on the Sunday, you can go to these workshops. So there's this interesting workshop on teaching design. So I turn up, and these two characters here are there. And they're referring to this paper that I wrote. I think, blimey, somebody knows something that I've done. What is this? So it started a process with the whole three of them were in Australia for another event later on and visited us at UQ. And so having human connections is really important in a transition. Out of ASWE, I ended up chairing the Global Colloquium on Engineering Education 2005 in Sydney. This used to be run by the ASWE and the host country. So I was the representative of the host country. Quick sidebar. In 2009, I was the American representative for this conference in Hungary. So I'm the only person who's been silly enough to be in two roles. But I was also the president of A Squared, E Squared, the Australasian Association of Engineering Education. So this is me talking, this is the crowd, and you'll see some other familiar faces. There's Kamyar, and there's Jack. This is the first time I met the Purdue crowd. I'd missed them up to that point. So I went from standing up there, and I just made a beeline down to the Purdue crowd and introduced myself. And then the next night, people are on a boat floating around Sydney Harbour, and you'll see some familiar faces there. So, this is my first encounter. So I invited myself to Purdue in 2005 in November and saw engineering education when it was still in the former ENAD building. Saw this sign. These are my photographs, by the way. The beauty of doing that in the role that I've happened to have had of accidental head is that at least I met the faculty, the former faculty who'd come from freshman engineering, the new shiny ones who'd just come in, which was Monica Cox, Sean, and Robin. And so it gave me some connections back, and that's been invaluable in this role, to at least have some memory, even a passing visit of the thing. I wonder whether it was an interview. I spent a week here, Kamyar didn't let me out of his sight. We went to dinner every night with various people, long story. Jack Lohman invited me to be on the panel for this Year of Dialogue Socratic panel at ASWE in the following June in Chicago. So that kind of got me some visibility in the thing. But I guess the best memory out of that was Kamyar had a whole event at Cafe Lux, which he had all of this community that was here, then, there. Vicky and I will still go to Cafe Lux anytime we're in Chicago, just because it was such a great event. Second visit to Purdue, I got invited back later on that year, 2006, December, to the Legacy Advance. The Advance in engineering education, for those not in this community, we call our so-called retreats advances. And this was to work out, well, what do we want to be known for? When this is down the track, what is it that our legacy is? So I gave a talk, and that's a covering slide which shows the old catalyst sign, and this is it all brings back interesting memories. So third visit to Purdue was a month later when I came here to interview, and this was the talk. So I like this one because this shows I'm a real engineer. Look, I have a hard hat on, so I must be an engineer. And it also shows industry, the STs, and university collaboration, all in the one slide. It also shows the sort of lifestyle at UQ that I was familiar with. Anyway, turns out I got the job. So now let me switch. That's how I got here. Let's talk quickly about realising the vision. First job I had with Kamyar, literally in days of being here, was to help set up the advance that was going to produce the strategic plan. And I'm going to show a bunch of slides here. I don't want you to look at the details. It's the fact that there was a lot of planning, a lot of things went on. So we had a plan, we had timelines, we did all this great engineering type stuff. Whoops, sorry, got carried away. And we were also hoping to influence, because we were doing this ahead of the then Purdue and college plans. I adopted an approach called appreciative inquiry, and for those familiar now with strategic doing, this is a key underpinning of strategic doing. Basically, it's not the usual stuff. You're trying to understand what gives life, what might it be, how can we approach the ideal, let's continue to improve, and so that's the approach we took. In that process, one of the steps was to get input from faculty about what you think about the place. And then I synthesized all those individual inputs and I came up with this. And this still holds true at some level today. So there was this series of what I called at the time a paradoxical extremes, a balancing metaphor. More recently, we refer to this as polarity management, but we didn't have that language then. So this tension, whatever you want to call it, there's polarities that we have to manage between the vision and being pragmatic. So it's not one or the other, it's how do we get the best of both. The first year legacy, the research thing, how do we get the best of both? Individual achievement versus the collective, vibrant group thing. The philosophical heart of tenure, we don't want to follow the rules because we're this different community. But hey, on the other hand, we still have to go through the same processes through the university, so we have to conform. But how do we be true to ourselves? Working nationally and globally with this community, because it's the largest, always has been, we have a special responsibility to provide leadership in community, not leadership as in domination. But on the same time, we've got to spend time at home building the community, and that's always an issue. How do you devote time between those? Being an emergent environment, not being fixed, but also having clarity. So here's a picture with a few people might recognize themselves. This is at the Holiday Inn in January 2008. And out came the strategic plan. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but those know that whenever I do presentations to Industrial Advisory Council, I tie everything back to this. So you can quickly skim that, you can read it later, but the headline, this is our vision for engineering and for engineering education at large, about being a more inclusive, socially connected and scholarly education, about transforming, about reimagining, about challenging the boundaries. The mission specifically for the school was this: reimagining engineering education, and in doing so, diversify it, embed creativity, innovation, and so forth, create new knowledge, that is to say research findings, and also particularly to empower agents of change. That's faculty, that's students, that's everybody. These were the 4 goals, and within those 4 goals, which is, empower the people, develop the leading programs, answer the big questions, build a community. There was 26 original strategic implementation strategies. We didn't follow all of those. They change over time anyway. These were our espoused values. Students come first. Thank you, Phil, for that one. Integrated, well, I'll let you read the rest. Those who are outside of this community will be new, but for us, you will have seen it. But what I want to get back to is, so why didn't we just do a new strategic plan? Well, there's been so much going on, we don't have time or the energy to come back to it. But the basic ideas, the core is the same. Yeah, the specifics of what we do might change. And so I've started to brand it 3 years ago as being our strategic compass, so east, northeast, whatever you want to look at it, that's our true north, and it sort of points to where we go. And I find it still very useful to explain to IAC what it is we're doing. So let's look at some of that, some of the outcomes of that. So in the first year experience is totally transformed. 2007, the 2 courses, one which was a 3-credit introduction to engineering, was done in 4 sections of 500 odd people, and then we transformed it into teams of 4 using active collaborative learning ideas, things that we knew from the literature kind of worked, into eye to eye. So that's a fundamental transformation. And it's doing it at scale. So you'll always hear Olin. But they have a small number of students. We're doing this. This was the time. This was to the ELT, the leadership team, and an open forum which was disputing whether or not we should do this. We're doing it at scale. The number up there is the number at the time. That number is now 2,200. So we're doing this at scale. I won't show you all this, except we had lots of information, plans for step-by-step. We were trying to address Purdue Engineer of 2020, quite a number of things, a bit ambitious, but we were actually doing that, and we've achieved a lot of those. We were doing, had a process by which we were going to move from one to the other. For those who don't know, when this building was built, the idea of I2I was coming along, but it couldn't be implemented in the building because it was too far advanced. So in October 2007, after Neil Armstrong and Gene Cernan and the other 16-odd astronauts opened the place, all the area through here was gutted. And in the next 12 months, what you see through there was built. And it was implemented with the old courses in the first year, and then it went to the new courses the following year. We had all sorts of plans about how we're going to do it. This was a well thought out process. Was it perfect? Was it perfect the first time? Have we evolved a lot? Absolutely. Is it perfect now? Well, everything can always be improved. The point is, a lot of effort went into it. There was immediate results in terms of attendance and also in improvement in DFW. My recollection is something like 25% of the people failed Eng 100 in those days. It was a requirement to degree. So we had seniors taking Eng 100 so they could graduate. I mean, it was broken. But this is the bit that people don't realise. My conservative estimate is, since that time, something like 16,000 students have each had 2 semester-long, scaffolded, teamed experience on the back of smart ways to set up teams and other things. This is an amazing number. So I don't control what happens for years 2, 3, and 4. But we've done all we can do in the space that we manage. Proud of involvement in multidisciplinary. I set up the capstone course at the end of 8. Kamyar, come along to my office, I don't know, October, November probably. We've got to run this course in January. Okay, fine. And over the time, the real sense of esprit de corps in this group, and with Mary's input, this idea of the purple squirrel nose, we're graduating not just any old type of people, but special people who are different. If you're looking for that, somebody who's different, who will catalyse and allow you to do things you can't do with a narrow technical specialty, we've got that graduate. I'm pleased to be able to help create the nest, which the students have owned and occupied and donated a coffee making machine and all sorts of other stuff, so that's really pleasing. In terms of grad stuff, this was a photograph I took of Kamyar's whiteboard back in about 2007. This is all the courses. You can see who was teaching what, and this is all the old numbers, and anyway, long story. So the graduate program was essentially in place. I did some work to try and, I always have to draw a picture. You've got that idea now, haven't you? So this is my picture to explain that it's what you do is fine. Yeah, and we try to capture it in a portfolio. Oh, yeah, and by the way, yeah, we have to do this kind of regular stuff that a PhD program has, but that's a necessary but not sufficient condition. Very pleased to have been able to solve a number of problems by setting up what we call the Explorer Fellowships, which is essentially a way to fund graduate students in their first semester here, because unlike a lot of other disciplines, where you did mechanical engineering in your undergraduate and then you go to a PhD, you've got some idea what that's about. People come into our program, what is this thing called engineering education? And so it takes longer, and it's such a broad field, which you'll see in a moment, it takes longer. So it was really important to give students a bit more space to learn what it is rather than tie up with a faculty member back in April when they signed up. This Wang facility, I can't tell you how important it is. Up until we had this opportunity, faculty, when they joined us, would be able to submit to get some sort of space or other to do their research. And there was little leftover rooms in Potter and all over the place. I mean, Krishna literally had a broom closet. I'm looking at Matt, off Matt's suite. That's what it was. It was whatever people didn't want. So this opportunity came along, we grasped it, we had a very small time window. So this is from August to November, bang. We just had to be on task and get this thing done. And this is such a moving target, and if we didn't grasp it, if we'd sort of procrastinated, we would have missed it, and there will be no more opportunities. I can tell you, there will be no more opportunities like that anytime soon. So we got in there at the right time. And you know the space. So one other thing that a story I've been trying to tell to the leadership committee, leadership team and other people for a while, and I think it's finally being heard, is Purdue has this awesome reputation in the technical areas. You know, great technical research, get a great technical PhD. Purdue, unique at this stage, although it's changing, amongst large universities, especially the Big Ten, has this sort of program. Other ones are acquiring them. So if you do something wrong with this one, others will now take over. So you've got first mover advantage. I hope the place is smart enough to take advantage of that. Put those together, and we've done it in two ways. I used to have future faculty fellows, which are PhDs who've been a TA maybe in the first year, and then we made them instructor record. They did some professional development with Heidi's Tulip program or other things. Some might have been doing one of the courses that's now in the graduate certificate, which is now a structured process, which if we, by either of those mechanisms, we can create next generation faculty, because a lot of heads in the discipline schools say not enough of our people go into faculty positions. This is the strategic opportunity. So Purdue, right now, still has a unique opportunity to generate a transformational group of faculty who will change the academy in this country and beyond by having the best technical research and a deep understanding of the pedagogy. Telling the story, I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. I've had to create all sorts of diagrams to explain this interesting department. I won't talk about all the bits there, but the unifying piece is we're trying to transform engineering education by having this synergistic relation between practice and research and practice and research. But it's very hard when you have a department named Engineering Education, you run a first-year program, you have a bachelor's program called Multidisciplinary Engineering, Interdisciplinary Engineering Studies, and a PhD you call Engineering. If you're mechanical or electrical civil, it's easy. All the names are the same. So this is one of the ways to explain that. So I tried ways like it's one vision, three programs to try and communicate that internally and externally. I went away from having a traditional hierarchical diagram to saying organisational chart. We have it. We know who reports to everybody. Fine. But four stakeholders, first-year students, undergraduate, grad, and external stakeholders. There's a whole bunch of, I won't go into them, a whole bunch of interdependent groups, each of which do their thing, but they have to depend on the others. There's the undergraduate bit, there's the graduate bit, etc. So this is a complex group of people who hopefully have one ultimate mission and objective, but they all work in vastly different places. Also spent a lot of time communicating it to friends and alumni and hanging out in wet football games and other things. Great to meet and to celebrate many of the interdisciplinary engineers who came out of this program in the 70s and 80s. A lot of them say, whatever happened to interdisciplinary engineering? Where's it gone? We say, well, it's here and it's alive. And it always has been. It certainly has been, those who know about it know about it. I've said for many, since I came here, I guess, this is the best idea Purdue ever had, but it doesn't even know it has it. And trust me, there's enough silliness going on that it could disappear because of whatever. It got me to thinking about the history. I've always been a buff of history. One of my professors, Tom Lay, got me thinking about the importance of history. So freshman engineering goes back 50 years. Research in engineering education, people like Bill LeBold were doing it then. Interdisciplinary studies started, and then we got formed. So we have this rich history. So we're a really new program with really deep roots, and that's an important story. This is the way I try to talk about what engineering education research is, because people sometimes think it's just something that goes on in a classroom. So I say it's, you know, the who, where, when, why, whatever. The people either, you know, discover engineering, learn to engineer, learn to become really effective engineers in whatever modality. Working with Lisa Talley, put together this research book, which then had a less corporate style, and it had 2 pages, open spread for every faculty about what they do. Little quirk for those who've never noticed, if you look up here, you'll see, the whole concept is somebody's writing on a wall, graffiti like, this is what's going on, this is our big questions, blah, blah, blah. So there's a question here, and it's signed K.H. It's Kamyar, it's one of his, so I kind of slipped it in after the event. He had passed about 2 years earlier. So go and check that out. Anyway, talking to all the grad students here at some stage have had me talking to them, but thinking about the grad program, the PhD in another way. So traditionally, changing slightly now, our PhD students have come with some life experience. I've done something else and they realise, this is the program that can help me go to where I want to be. So we see it as a highly customisable thing where you can pivot your career to any range of things. Now that can be confronting because there isn't a clear endpoint. You have to take charge of it. But it's a model that other PhDs at some level could take on to view it more as an enabler rather than as a process that you go through. We've celebrated lots of anniversaries. There's the choir in celebrating 5 years, and there's the famous 10. Out of one of the advances, the question was, we need to know more about what's going in the department, so I created the memo each week. And then the question every faculty asks, where's the money? So I did create the little money box, so when faculty come in, I can show them where the money is, and they can have any of it that they want. So a few memorable moments. Working with Kamyar, late in my career, and it was only, I guess, 4 years working. It really means a lot to me. Quite different characters, but we had a lot in common. One of the things I did when I got my epistemology professorship at the Board of